In this episode, we are exploring a book that challenges the mainstream narrative on global warming. It's called Climate of Fear: Why We Shouldn't Worry About Global Warming by Gale Moore. So, grab your coffee, sit back, and let's unpack this thought-provoking perspective. The book opens with a powerful quote from H.L. Mencken. The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed by menacing it with a series of hobgoblins. Moore argues that global warming has become one of those hobgoblins, a fear-mongering tool used by politicians, media, and even some scientists to push their agendas. He questions the apocalyptic scenarios painted by figures like Al Gore, who famously declared global warming the most serious problem our civilization faces. Moore takes us through a series of alarming predictions from the 1970s about global cooling, which were later replaced by dire warnings of global warming. He points out the irony that we seem to be living in the best of all possible worlds, climate-wise, given that humanity has thrived in both hotter and colder climates throughout history. He criticizes the media for amplifying these fears, citing outlets like the New York Times and PBS, and highlights the inconsistencies in the scientific community's predictions. One of the book's most compelling arguments is the potential economic fallout of policies aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Moore argues that these policies could lead to a worldwide recession, rising unemployment, and increased international tensions. He emphasizes the importance of energy to our modern way of life, suggesting that drastic cuts would make life harder, less safe, and less humane. He criticizes the idea of no regrets policies, like energy conservation and fuel efficiency, arguing that they are not the free lunch they are often claimed to be. Moore challenges the assumption that global warming would be entirely negative. He suggests that a warmer climate could bring benefits such as longer growing seasons, healthier populations, and reduced transportation costs. He points out that past warm periods in history have often coincided with periods of prosperity and cultural advancement. He also argues that modern economies are less dependent on weather than those of the past, making them more resilient to climate change. The book delves into the complexities of climate science, questioning the reliability of climate models. Moore highlights the disagreements among climatologists about the effects of greenhouse gases, citing experts like Richard Lindzen, S. Fred Singer, and Patrick Michaels, who predict negligible or small warming. He criticizes the IPCC's predictions, noting that they have been revised downward over the years. He also points out the limitations of the data used to measure global temperatures, such as the heat island effect in urban areas and the lack of coverage in many parts of the world. Moore draws on historical evidence to support his argument, suggesting that humanity has adapted to climate changes in the past. He discusses the climatic optimum period around 9,000 to 4,000 years ago, when temperatures were significantly warmer than today, and yet civilizations flourished. He argues that human progress has often been linked to warmer periods, citing examples like the Renaissance and the little climate optimum of the High Middle Ages. The book also critiques international efforts to combat global warming, like the Kyoto Protocol. Moore argues that these agreements are flawed, as they exempt developing countries like China and India, which are major contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. He suggests that such agreements could harm the economies of developed nations while doing little to address the problem. Moore advocates for a cost-benefit analysis approach to climate policy, arguing that the costs of reducing emissions should be weighed against the potential benefits. He criticizes the precautionary principle, which suggests that we should take action to prevent potential harm even if the evidence is uncertain. He argues that this principle is misused in the context of global warming, as the costs of action could outweigh the benefits. In conclusion, Moore calls for a more rational and balanced approach to the issue of global warming. He urges policymakers to consider the broader implications of their decisions and to avoid being swayed by fear and political expediency. He suggests that a warmer world might not be the catastrophe it is often portrayed to be, and that humanity can adapt and thrive. So, there you have it, folks. Climate of Fear challenges us to think critically about the narrative surrounding global warming. While it doesn't deny the reality of climate change, it encourages us to consider a wider range of perspectives and to weigh the potential benefits and costs of different policy approaches. As always, I encourage you to do your own research and form your own opinions. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time on the BrightLearn podcast.
Visit brightlearn.ai for more fascinating videos like this one, and naturalnews.com for full editorial coverage and breaking news on critical stories that keep you informed and aware of what's really going on.